Well, guys, it was 3 years ago yesterday we heard this Pratt sprouting crap as he locked down the country.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. Because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households. That is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and travelling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. These are the only reasons you should leave your home. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine. And you should do this as little as you can. If you don't follow the rules, the police will have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings. To ensure compliance with the government's instruction to stay at home, we will immediately close all shops selling non-essential goods, including clothing and electronic stores, and other premises, including libraries, playgrounds and outdoor gyms and places of worship. We'll stop all gatherings of more than 2 people in public, excluding people you live with. And we'll stop all social events, including weddings, baptisms and other ceremonies, but excluding funerals.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that was 3 years ago now, but still the media and politicians try to downplay the damage it caused and what it obviously led on to. Be that jab passports or mandates, it was a disaster either way. This usually brings out the excuse of, oh, they didn't know what they was doing and so they did their best. This is nonsense because we called it out at the time and obviously so did many others. Here, for instance, I got a clip from the lockdown vault back in May 2020 that has Luke Johnson speaking like a prophet on the BBC.
I think one of the unfortunate things that's happened is that the country has got petrified. You know, we're the most nervous large nation of any. So the government's propaganda has frightened us rigid. And
I mean, it does look like we have the second highest deaths at the moment, so people maybe have
yes,
good reason
but if
to be
you
scared.
are, how many people who have no other morbidities under the age of 60 have died from this illness?
Who have no other morbidities?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you how many people under 65 have died. And obviously
Under
some of those
60,
with other morbidities, may well have
morbidities.
survived. A morbidity doesn't mean you're...
350. You're more likely to drown. There's 400 people a year that drown, right? So I think we have to get things a bit in context.
What comfort would that offer to the families of those who've lost loved
Every
ones?
death is tragic, but believe me, we're already in the largest recession for 300 years. In fact, it's not just one recession. The Bank of England have said the economy will shrink by 14%. That's the equivalent of 2 recessions. It's a depression. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have 2 million more unemployed people within a year. Imagine the agony of 2 million more unemployed people. How many deaths might flow from that? How many deaths are flowing from the fact that we've got half as many A&E appointments at the moment? Cancer patients not being seen, people with heart disease not being seen. And the collateral damage of this campaign of fear and lockdown has to be taken into account. Very soon, I believe, lockdown will be causing more deaths than the virus.
Yes, in May 2020, when most of us were calling this out, there was the odd voice on the BBC, but in what will surprise few of you, they was never invited back. Personally, I think it's vital that people see the BBC hag's attempt at damage control in response to what he said. Obviously, they're doing that at the government's instruction, but he didn't stop there because he even went further that day.
I tell you what most disappointed me about the Prime Minister's speech, which I do think was vague, and I wasn't really paying attention to the message, was the fact he repeated the line that I think was a figure first put about by Neil Ferguson of we've avoided 500,000 deaths. I don't think this country was ever facing 500,000 deaths. I think that was a ludicrous exaggeration. I think it was scaremongering.
Well, it was 500,000 if nothing was done.
And a bit like Sweden, he was estimating about 10 times the number of deaths they've had if his model had been followed. And I don't have a great deal of confidence in a lot of the advice that the government's getting, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah, let's not forget that 500,000 death prediction that these clowns couldn't have got with their blatantly fraudulent died after 28 days of a positive test nonsense. You know, the thing that literally spawned the memes of hit by a bus or eaten by a shark but died by coronavirus. What a clown show that actually was.
You see, I mean, they're just pissing on us without even the courtesy of calling it rain.
Anyway though, I've got one more clip, so let's see him shit on the attempts to have us follow China's lockdown lunacy. Here, play that clip.
And bringing in the example of China locking down regions. China is a communist dictatorship. They can lock down whoever they want, and they bring in the military to do it. So I think we are not a comparable society. We are a civilized democracy. And therefore, I don't think we can adopt the same sort of methods that they use in China, and it's not relevant.
Yes, I mean, in China, they're walled, well, they kind of seal people in their homes.
Is that what we want? I mean, as it is, we've given up more liberties than ever in the history of this country over this lockdown. And we shouldn't forget that we are a free society, and the way in which we've waived our rights so that we are under effective house arrest as a nation should not be taken lightly.
Oh yeah, let's never forget the scumbags in this country push for us to follow China's lockdown model, which includes tosspos like Jeremy Yun.
My sister lives in Beijing, and she flew back to Beijing in the middle of lockdown. And just to give you an idea of the contrast, she was escorted from the airport in Beijing to her home by Ministry of Health officials, and then put into her home for 2 weeks quarantine. The door was sealed, and she had a police car sitting outside her house periodically.
Yeah, let's never forget that tosspot said that, and in fact every time his name comes up I must remember to stick that clip in there. But as you see, after trashing the zero COVID tosspots, Luke Johnson moved on to pointing out the fact that people have lost more freedom during this than ever before in the history of the country. And that there is something that should never be forgotten or bloody repeated, because I expect they will try. The best we can do is remind people of what they did and who was calling them out, which is why I'm doing this.
Where